Okay, so I would like to call the special meeting open at 6:04. And may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
And a second?
Second.
Jerry, second. Any objections? Okay, so moved. And do we have any public comment on the one action agenda item? And nothing, we have no in person, but I will quickly read that if anyone does enter the room, that they are able to make a public comment under consideration by completing the speaker form or at the time that it reaches the agenda. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. Speakers will be chosen in random order. Each person may only speak once per agenda topic and is required to address the board from the podium. Public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed by the board unless placed on an agenda at a subsequent meeting in accordance with the Brown Act. The board may request staff to respond orally at the meeting or in writing at a future time. A total of 20 minutes public comment per topic will be allowed. And if you need translation services, please contact Renee at the district office 72 hours in advance by mail or email. And the meeting is videoed and broadcast on FBUSD YouTube channel. And I don't know if we have anyone listening in virtually, but members of the public who wish to address the board during the board meeting are asked to please submit prior to the start of the meeting by emailing boardmeeting@fbusd.us. Staff will make all attempts to share and record any submissions received prior to or during the board meeting. However, depending on timing, late submissions may be provided to the board after the conclusion of the meeting. So just to clarify, there's no one in person to make public comment, and there's no one that have submitted by email. Is that right? Okay, thank you, Renee. So we are moving to our action 2.1 construction projects.
Mind if I close that blind?
So do we have, Wendy, are you presenting?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination of presentations. I think Don has a PowerPoint that he's going to share and go over some of the numbers. Basically, I'll let Becky talk about what the action item is.
Sorry, this is a new world, watching all of you from out here. So I can't read any faces, and I can't see who wants to talk. So just so the board knows, we brought this as an action item because it's very clear to us that we have to make sure that we are prioritizing our bond projects appropriately. And by that I mean we have two major projects with bond money, Redwood and alternative education. At Redwood, it is paramount, hugely important that we complete the Redwood project as envisioned, to the most part. And the reason for that is the new classrooms. So the big part of Redwood is that we have the 2 preschool classrooms slated to begin construction very soon. And then the third phase was going to be adding in 3 classrooms at Redwood and then restructuring the front office and adding in a little bit more office space. We had that originally as the third phase of construction, not knowing that the TK timelines were going to come into play as soon as they did. So for right now, we have that third phase of construction being completed in the fall of 2026. That's too late. TK is going to be in full bloom in the fall of 2025, and we start expanding TK this fall. What's troubling was, once we started looking at the timelines, was that we need those 3 classrooms done as soon as possible, or we won't have a place to put the kids. Also, we need to make sure that we have enough money to do all of these projects by what is absolutely mandatory, necessary, desirable. So Wendy's going to be thrilled that I finally got that right. So with that, I just want to say that it's really important to us that we bring this to you so that you understand why we're asking you to reprioritize, and I should say reprioritize, retime the phases of construction so that those TK classrooms can be done before TK is in full bloom, TK for every 4-year-old.
Okay.
Okay, so Don, did you want to go ahead and talk about where we are, with the budget piece?
Sure. Do you want me to share my screen? Is that would be the easiest?
Probably, yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. You should have hard copy. Some of it may be hard to read on a small screen, but let's give it a shot here. Let's see. And I had to share the screen here. I'm not quite. Okay, can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet,
Not
not
yet.
yet.
Okay. I'm not seeing you guys right now, but I've got my PowerPoint up. Clean up the registers.
So John, go back to the screen where you have the Brady Bunch screen, and then go down to the little, next to the hand, there's a rectangle with an arrow pointing out.
Yeah, that's what I pointed.
Okay, we gotta click on it,
Okay, good.
and then it's gonna ask you to share, to select the screen, so go ahead and select the Brady Bunch screen.
Okay.
And then use the tab, go over to the tab that you need to go to get to your PowerPoint.
Okay, looks like it's going.
We got you now.
Okay, do you see PowerPoint now? Or-
Looks like it's processing. Did he freeze?
Okay. It says I'm sharing with Firefox. Do you see the screen now? Oops, I need to go back.
So Renee, do you have the same presentation? Because I think that Don is in a place where his bandwidth is not as strong.
Yes, I
So
do.
that's why we're losing him here.
Can you put
So
it
Don,
over
why don't
here?
we have Renee go ahead and share the presentation, and you go ahead and just.
That might be better, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. Let's try it out, Mike. And everybody can have hard copies as well, so they may future. I guess I'll let you.
All right, Don, give me a second to pull it up.
And I think the board has it in their
It's
packet
in
as
the-
well.
Yeah, it's in
I'm
the
in my
board packet
office.
also.
It's the 17-page attachment.
Sorry, I'm doing left-handed sideways mouse work.
Okay, Renee, do you want me to try and do it for mine?
No, I got it. I just need to know, I'm just, there we go. I'm just being clumsy. I got it. Of course, I don't have my glasses on. Where's the,
Let me get it on mine.
Some up there.
no, we got it. We're good. Go ahead, Don. We're on slide number 1.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, slide number 1 of your PowerPoint.
Okay, I've got it on my other screen here, I can see. The slide number 1 is the budget that is for the phase that we're currently on, which is phase 1, Redwood Elementary, where we'll prep the site already now. We have a GMP from the contractor, which should be a couple slides down. On this, you see a column called budget, and it totals at $8.3 million. That's our original budget. There's another column called forecast, it's actually the true budget, now that we have GMP price. And that totals to about $9.3 million. Do you guys follow?
Yes.
Okay. So this is without doing the bus loop. The budget's without the bus loop that we talked about back now. I have a, next slide we'll have the bus loop for discussion purposes. So if we follow through with this project and complete it, it leaves us about, and we use 100% of the contingency, it leaves us about 1.9, just shy of $2 million for the next project. If we were to use zero contingency, we'd have about 2.3 million left for the next project. You can see that under the funding status available funds, that's available after the project. A bit of a misnomer there. So, and the gist of this is that when we move forward with phase one, we're gonna have somewhere between 1.998 and 2 million, 2.3 million for whatever we do next, out of the Series A bonds. This is without any other series bonds as yet. So we'll move to the next slide. If you could.
Yep.
All right, this is the identical project. The difference is inserted the bus bar, not the bus loop, sorry. And it affects the budget. The construction cost is different, as well as the design and construction support is a percentage. So if we were to follow through with phase one with the bus bar, or a bus loop, we would have about 1.4 million to 1.8 million to carry forward to the next project. Now what's that's based off of? I'm ready for the second and third and fourth slide.
Okay, slide 3 is,
It's going to be difficult to read. We should have a harder copy. This is the GMP presented by the contractor. And those are the numbers. You go to the fourth slide at the bottom, if you look at your hard copy, it has a breakdown for the cost for construction, as well as on the far right, a breakdown for the bid alternate, which is the bus loop. So those first two slides are based off of this GMP. And we need to get the contractor direction that we want to move forward. And I hope that's part of this agenda, or part of this action.
And just, Don, just if you could you remind us what the acronym GMP is for the people who are watching?
Yes, guarantee maximum price. So, what we have, let's do my screen here.
Supported by,
Just what I bet.
but this is the page
At the bottom, there's a total bid of about 7.4 million, and then there's a contingency of about 370. We reduced the contingency a little bit on this one with confidence from what contractor we have. So all in all, the GMP is 7.7 if you want to go to the bus loop. And that's reflective of the first slide, very first slide that you looked at. So I think at the end of this, we need to decide if we're moving forward with phase one. I think we would be, and which form we're going to move forward. But let's move on to slide 5.
okay.
This is where it gets stealthy. Okay, so I carried over from Series A to 1.9 million, assuming we're not doing the bus loop. You see on the top right hand, 1.9. That's the remaining funds from Series A. And we're going to sell Series B sometime this year, hopefully sooner than later. So even with those sales, if we were to move forward with the alt-ed based on the budget estimate that we got recently from the estimator, we're going to be upside down by $3.5 million. So we really can't move with alt-ed just yet. We need to start the next project with a smaller scale project, which is the phase 3, doing it in advance of phase 2, if that makes any sense. Or the second half of the Redwood project that he has spoken of for various reasons. One, I'm talking about financially, but she's talking about timing for the pre-K being ready in time as well. So it's kind of a twofold reason we're kind of flipping things around here. So if you move to the next slide, I think it's 6.
Yep.
This is jumping to phase 3, but doing it in advance of phase 2, if that makes any sense. So we just stay on Redwood Elementary School, and we carry on with the modernization at that site, and forego the OTI temporarily at least. What that does for us is carrying over from Series A about 798,000, and that's less than the 1.9 because we've already spent some money on OTED for design and other costs. So I'm projecting just shy of 800,000 available for Series A if we just jump ahead here and put OTED on the back burner for the time being. And then we did an $11 million bond sale. We can complete the Redwood Elementary School project, or what we've been calling Phase 3, with the funds on hand, with about $2.8 to $3.2 million of carryover money for the next project, which would be going back into an OTED. Let's move to the next slide.
And that's without the bus loop.
That's without the bus.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's not a full,
And then with the bus loop is the next slide.
Yep.
And the numbers are similar. It's, we have about 2.3 available to 2.7 available to go back to OTED in the near future. Now, that's still not enough to do OTED. So we need to wait for the Series C bonds, which come in 2025. And let's move to the next slide. I'm going to make a little slide curve and talk about the document you guys had prepared by somebody named Schoolworks a year ago or so. And the next slide after that is kind of a zoom in. These were projections that were state funding sources for you guys in the future. And if you look at the slide number 9, I circled 4.166. That is what they project that you're going to have available or to apply for the state. The unknown variable is when will that be available? For that amount, it won't be any sooner than 2024, but the state would have to do a bond sale. They're about prime and ready to do one at some point here. I imagine by 2024, 2025, the state would do their own bond, and we could apply for that $4.1 million. Let me move to the next slide then. Slide 10, which might be the last slide.
Yes.
Mistake. So this is going back to trying to do OTED, but not doing it now, doing it in 2025. What that allows is, I inflated the value from the cost estimate by 3 years, because, we're going to have inflation. And I used 5% each year, which is what's occurring now, but I think it's high. I don't think it's going to continue that way, but I want to be conservative. And I backed out some of the site elect work that in discussions recently thought was not totally necessary. So with that, I'm projecting that the project, if we waited 3 years, it's going to be a $19 million project. And money on hand at that time is going to be about the 2.8. This is without the bus loop. That is a carryover from the Phase 3 done in advance of Phase 2, if that makes sense. And then the Series C bonds, which are scheduled to be sold in 2025, is $12 million. And then the state bonds is the 4.1 that I just spoke of. That's not guaranteed yet, but by that time, I believe the state, they haven't sold a bond for a couple of years now, and I can see that coming. So with that, we would be able to do to add some caveats as long as we keep contingencies down. I'm showing a negative 69,000. That's within an error for this project. If we had, if we spent half the contingency, we would be fine. Even if we spent 75% of the contingency rather than 100%, we would be fine, and we would be able to complete OTED in 2025-26. That's the last slide I have. I think we'll probably open for discussion, but I just want to be sure that before we finish that we give direction to FRC to carry on or not carry on.
So Don, I have one question. In the chart with the potential 4.166 that we would be eligible for, that local share of 40%, I assume our bond funds would count towards that?
Yeah, the money you spend on Phase 1 will likely cover it. Well, by then we will spend money on Phase 1 and Phase 3 in advance. just the money you spent on those two are gonna cover the match.
But bond funds count as a match.
Yeah,
Okay.
as what, you know, Kevin and us have applied for about to apply for is funding for phase one. So by the time we get reimbursed for phase one, that's what's gonna be used for phase three, so, it's always a rolling kind of dollar thing, and you never get your state money in time, so you're kind of fronting it now, get reimbursed, and then use it for phase two or three, and in our case, it would probably be phase three. Hopefully that was clear. It gets convoluted when you're juggling these kind of dollars.
So you are looking for a combined action to approve the reorganization of the phases and for FRC to move forward with the GPM presented.
Exactly.
GMP,
We
sorry,
give a
GMP
workshop,
presented.
GMP with or
Okay.
without the bus loop,
Mhm.
and then, and a global approval of going to phase three prior to phase two.
Right, so adjustment of the alt ed project, and then we have to decide with or without the bus loop. So I think this is pretty grim news, I think, but I understand the order in what's pushing it. So I'd like to open it up, first find out if there's any board comment. There's no one in person, and while we're waiting for that, if we have board members that have questions about the presentation.
There's no board comment. There's
Oh,
nothing in the board.
Okay,
email.
thank you. So, board, do you have questions about the presentation?
Well, I guess the question I have is maybe, I don't know if this conversation's happened with the Redwood site, but I feel like the bus loop is a huge need. So Becky and Wendy, what do you think?
I think this was a painful conversation, Kathy. We all agree that the bus loop is something that is necessary to Redwood. The hard part is that we are now getting down to the point with the cost of inflation and construction costs that we don't know if we're gonna have enough money. So when it comes down to it, is the bus loop more important than a classroom or than the front office at Redwood or restructuring more office space? And it's one of those itemized things that can come out because we haven't had a bus loop forever.
And I think that the bus loop is also something that can be added in later. It could even be done when or after phase three, which is phase two, moving to phase three. You know, when alt ed is done. I mean, it's something that if the funds are there, when we're done, can certainly go back in.
So my question is, I don't recall, is it 500,000 for the loop, or what's
It's
the
about
estimate?
500,000 that the cost reduction by not doing the loop.
Yeah,
And so when do,
yes, in today's dollars, about $500,000. If we put it off, it'll be a little bit more.
right, and then, and the other question would be, would we have funds in, or reserve or something that would help offset that in a later future time? I don't think we'll ever have.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, like, to where we can meet it in the middle. If we did delay it, is there feasibility that we would be able to take that on locally and do it ourselves, or no?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how much of a priority it is. And if it's that much of a priority for the board, then don't take it out now, don't defer it. You know, we were thinking of deferring it so that we knew exactly where we stood when we got to alt ed and know exactly what we were able to do or not do. Based on that. But if it's something that the board feels strongly needs to happen, then we just leave it in and move forward that way.
Well, I just think it's not something a hill I'm going to die on, as somebody once said. But I feel like it's a safety issue. And the more kids we put on the Redwood campus, the more littles that are running in and out. I mean, we've been lucky, but we have had accidents. We have had things happen. So this is question for the construction, but is there things that we would save by having when it's tore up once versus going back in at the end? Do you see any kind of cost savings to doing it while the front office is tore up versus coming back in later?
Yeah, I mean, if the bus loop is good to the majority start, I would recommend doing it now, rather than put it off. What would be teetering on what we could afford later is what we do for all debt, because that's what it would impact all debt in 2025 is how much we got to carry for that.
Right. Any other questions?
So I guess out of $28 million in projects over these 3 phases, the bus loop at $500,000 is the only thing that we really saw as something we could
Well,
not
it's the
do.
easiest large piece to carve out and wait on. But
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And the alt ed project was 2 or 4 million.
Here's the hard part.
Yeah.
It comes down to figuring out which project is going to take the sacrifice. We have a set amount of money and inflation continues to go up. And so as inflation continues to go up, we start pulling things out. And Jim and Kevin and Don have all experienced the wonderful meetings we've had where we've said white walls, nothing pretty. Where we've pulled out 10,000 here and 10,000 there. If the bus loop is important to the board and we see that as a priority, then we just have to be prepared that when we get to phase 3, whatever is left over, we may have to readjust what those plans are. We may have to readjust some of the buildings or some of the landscaping or some of the whatever. But we can do the bus loop if that's what you say, if that's what you believe is a priority for Redwood. Just have to be prepared for the consequences, which is later down the road, we may have to pull something differently.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to ask was if the alt ed project was 2 million, then we're taking $500,000 away from that. And what does that, how can we curb, I mean, the cost is only going to continue to go up. So how would we curb that? How would we reduce that?
I have no idea where we'd peel $500,000 off of alt ed at this point,
And so what,
except to reduce it by a classroom.
what would we be looking at alt ed that would go missing? We already scaled back a bit, right? So would be cutting out a whole classroom or cutting out some of those independent office areas? What would we lose for 500,000?
I mean, it looks like the alt ed is 13.5 million,
Right,
unless I'm reading that wrong.
and it started out at 15 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we don't have enough to do over there. It's 2025 and state money. And we would have to find more state money or maybe pre-K money come through, or we would have to find money elsewhere to do the OTED. It just means we have to find $500,000 more if we carry on with the bus one.
Bus loop. Well, that's where I'm kind of getting at the value. It seems in my mind in this moment, $500,000 isn't much in a 13 or 15 million project. It is, but it isn't in the scheme of, I would think that there would be something that we could do if it wasn't using priority money for that when that future time comes. It just, if we can save and make it a safer site, I would think that would be my priority, but I don't know what the rest of the board would like to do.
Makes sense to me.
Is there any savings to doing both Redwood phases at the same time or back to back instead of having alt ed in the middle?
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're gonna do.
Well, no, I know, that's what we're talking about, but is there any savings that,
But I think we're saying we have to flip them,
Yeah.
right?
right, I
Yeah.
guess my question is,
You're saying.
is there,
Yeah.
by flipping it and doing
By-
Redwood back to back, is there any savings in doing that?
Gotcha. Has that been calculated? So
And maybe there's not, maybe the projects are totally unrelated and there's no,
Jim, can you answer that?
We were both trying to unmute ourselves. So. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, I was going to say, they are kind of unrelated, but your cost savings would be if you could roll on from one project right on directly onto the other. It doesn't matter if it's all or it would cost more money. So if you can make it so they just basically are finishing the project as they're starting the next one, it doesn't matter either way. That's where your cost savings is, as long as they don't have to demobilize, you know.
But
So-
is that a $500,000 cost savings?
It could be.
Yeah, it depends. I don't think it's $500,000 now, but it is a savings.
So we,
You know, less time they have to bring back a trailer or have to bring back up other crews.
And I think there's a lot of wild cards here. You know, Don's talking about state bond money, that's a wild card. We don't know if we're gonna get that or not, but we can do this, cross our fingers and hope. And then there's also the TK, pre-K, kinder money, that's not looking too hopeful for us, to be quite honest with you, but I'm still using that horrible strategy of hope that somehow we can qualify for something there. We are having some discussions about looking at that grant proposal to see if there's something we can do in Fort Unified so that we can qualify for even $500,000, which would be one TK, one PK classroom, but it's got to be full day. So those are some of the wild cards that still remain out there. What I would say to you is that if the board sees the bus loop as a priority for Redwood, then we just have to be prepared to take it out somewhere else, or we have to be prepared to really push for some of these bond dollars, or we're going to have to reimagine how we do some of our preschool TK so that we can qualify for some of those bond dollars.
so just to go back to Scott's question, it sounds like that's with construction, if you could seamlessly have your workers be efficient and working all the time, not having any downtime, that's almost impossible in the construction world. So we can't really rely on the project's savings by combining them. It's just a matter of getting it done, because there are funds right now for both those phases, 1 and 3 together, and we just have to pause Alt Ed project and reevaluate that once 1 and 3 are, if we have approval for that.
And if we don't get that state grant of $4+ million, is there going to be any chance of building an Alted campus?
Well, there'll probably be a
it
chance,
will-
but it would be very different than what we've been looking
A
at.
different vision.
Let's say the money just stays the way it is right now.
Mhm.
If we get to the third phase, which would be Alt Ed, and there's 10 million left, we would have to reimagine what we do with Alt Ed. It may not be the site that was originally designed by TKA.
And we have to renegotiate a redesign, or is that something that would be above our contract numbers now? We'd have to, if we had to reevaluate how that would look.
Probably, or we
where?
could scale back the size and scope of it, or, I mean, there are all different ways we can approach it when we get there. But this gives us time to do that, and also making sure that we're ready for the full implementation of TK.
Any other questions?
And just to hit the point home, we're not saying that we're not doing Alt Ed. We're not saying that we are ripping apart Alt Ed. We're saying that the priority really has to be Redwood and these new classrooms. There's no way we can bring on a whole nother grade level at Redwood without real estate, and we need those classrooms. So please know that if it comes down to it, we may have to redesign Alt Ed, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to do Alt Ed.
Right, it's just changing the order of the projects, because they are considered temporary portables, replacing outdated and modernization, which we have told the public what we're doing with the funds. So I know it's still a required and necessary improvement. So any other questions on, so it sounds like I'm not seeing any objection to the changing, adjusting the Alt Ed project being the third phase instead of the second phase. It looks like there's no objection to that. It's just a matter of if we want to prioritize the bus loop, which may cost plus or minus 500,000. So I don't know how much would that be happening simultaneously with the first phase, like everything's happening at once, or is it going to be a longer delay and disruption at the site?
I think
just don't know.
the bus loop was originally scheduled to be part of Phase 1 Redwood, so it doesn't create any
Extra delay,
it doesn't
disruption.
change the disruption factor.
Okay, because that matters as well, but it seems like more kids will be there, so more safety would be, might be a priority. Does anyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision, and Alted, if anybody's seen their campus, they're in desperate need, but also keeping little children safe. And we're going to have how many more tiny little kids on campus? It does make sense, hard as it is.
Okay. Any other public comment before we ask for a motion?
There's no public comment in the email, Diane.
Thank you. So may I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the change in project schedule and include the bus loop at Redwood.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
trustee Mattson,
Yes.
President Haley,
Yes.
trustee Makla,
Yes.
trustee Babcock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So now we also need an item to, as part of that, this could have been the same thing, to approve allowing FRC to move forward with the GMP, including the bus loop.
Oh, that's right.
Is that
And
right,
I also wonder, was that motion clear enough to say that we're doing phase 1, phase 3, phase 2?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay.
When we said,
As
and we,
for- sorry,
moved to approve the bus loop, but you wanted the verbiage with the GMP.
Yeah, basically giving FRC the go-ahead to move forward with the GMP, including the bus loop.
So I guess we will ask for a second motion.
You want it to be the same person? So I move to move forward with the GMP, including the bus loop.
And I'll second.
Very good. And we will be formal and ask for a motion. Or is that just clarifying the motion?
It's the second motion, we need a second vote.
Okay.
So,
Roll
trustee
call.
Babcock,
Yes.
trustee Makla,
Yes.
President Haley,
Yes.
trustee Mattson,
Yes.
trustee Schneider,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
And not to keep bringing it up, but I just want to make sure it's really clear that we voted to switch around the phases. Because
I think Kathy said that,
Yeah,
to
she said that.
reorder the.
I don't know if the
Change
motion
that.
should say how we're re.
Oh, okay.
Order,
I
you know,
see
I
what you're
just want to
saying.
make it clear in written language so there's no question.
How about if you, Renee, will you read it back or how you're going to put it in the
Yes,
notes?
what I have is a motion
Should
to
pick.
reorganize construction phases so that they go phase 1, phase 3, phase 2.
Great.
And the second motion is approve FRC to move ahead with GMP, including bus loop.
Great.
Is that
Thank you.
Yep.
I
Thank
said as
you.
presented, I think, but now Renee's got them listed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that so that it's clear.
So does that cover everything needed, Don? Don,
Sorry, I'm trouble.
does that cover everything you needed from us?
Yes, it does. It's
Okay.
crystal clear now.
Okay.
Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so that completes our action item. So if there, we will be moving into closed session. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Superintendent Walker, for clarifying and giving us bad news. But I think there is good news that Redwood's phases will be moving forward together.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll be asking for public comment on closed session agenda.
And
The
still,
4.1.
there's no public comment on closed session agenda,
Thank,
closed session items.
thank you. So I will adjourn to closed session at 6:44 PM.